Innsmouth, stranger.
Hi, I'm Rob Whiten from the Innsmouth Book Club. Join me and my fellow guide John Chadwick as we take you on a fortnightly tour of Innsmouth. We visit places such as the Picture House, the Library and Innsmouth Museum to discuss all aspects of weird fiction, whether it be book, film, music, TV or art. As well as that, we stop over at the Gilman House to have a chat with a resident guest. That includes authors, artists, musicians, in fact Lovecraftian creatives of all types. You can find our free shows on Patreon, and there you can also sign up as a patron, which brings you bonus content, plus a monthly PDF copy of Innsmouth News, which features articles, author spotlights, all the latest news and reviews, and more. You can find us at patreon.com/InnsmouthBC. We hope to see you soon, because remember, Innsmouth isn't just a place, it's a state of mind.
This episode is brought to you by California Tea House. California Tea House is a family-owned tea store where you can find some of the world's best loose-leaf tea and organic herbal tea blends. Like a fine wine, there is no comparison between fine loose-leaf and common broken-leaf tea bags. So, check them out. Check them out. They have quite a bit of pretty awesome tea collections. I'm a huge fan of their white teas. They have a tea club that you can join, but, they've got green tea, black tea, white tea, oolong, that Robios and herbal tea. They've also got teaware. So check out California Tea House in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by Donner. Check out the show notes to find a good deal at Donner. Like the sound of this? This is the Donner Island Delay, and the really cool Donner LP that I've shown off on Instagram. Check it out. They've got some really good summer deals, and check out their snap deals as well. Use the link in the show notes to help support the show. Get yourself some cool musical instruments, maybe some patch cords. Cool. Hey everyone, it's me, DB. Just reminding you, we have t-shirts in the shop. Just go to pgttcm.com, check out all of our cool t-shirts and stickers. Heck, we even got some shelf curtains in there. Keep clean, look cool, have cool stickers to put on stuff. Join us on Patreon, get a free sticker. Or don't. It's up to you.
You're listening to KZOM, Oleander Public Radio.
Greetings, listeners. It is I, TV Spitzer and Farmer Dave, here once again to talk to you about the Cthulhu mythos, its books, its monsters, its unfortunate human casualties, its timeline in general, and even its tangential bits, like the dreamlands or things of a weird nature that are Lovecraftian leaning. Once more we head into those dark woods, further feeling those malevolent forces upon us. Once again we walk down the lightless stone staircase in the middle of nowhere.
You're listening to KZOM.
Hey everybody, dads and grads out there. It is People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. I am your host, D to the B to the Spitzer. And to my virtual right is my friend, my cohort and my co-host, David, Farmer Dave Heath. Dave, how the hell are you doing today?
I am doing much better, thank you very much.
Good. I am so glad to hear that. Recently we're not going to talk about that episode. Weird stuff has been going on in Oleander, and we can't really talk about it right now, but we in the future we'll have an episode that covers this. So
we could tell you about it, but then we'd have to shoot you.
That's a little extreme, Dave. I think we could just No.
We could tell you about it, but then we would have to kidnap you, and keep you on an underground base.
Yeah, I think shooting's easier because I don't want to have to feed a bunch of people. Bullets are actually that's not a funny joke. And in recent things, that's not a. Hey,
that's true. I was not thinking. We may want to cut that part out.
No, we're going to leave it in and say that we recognize that is not a cool joke. But what's going on at the farm these days?
Well, so and we'll maybe talk. I'm going to be talking a little bit about this in the middle part.
Yeah.
And so we have a goat.
Yeah.
And this is a new thing for us.
Yeah.
But is apparently not uncommon for milking goats.
Okay.
She does not like to milk.
Okay.
Is this for some reason the system? So what she does, but she wants to get on the milking stand and eat.
Sure.
So she gets down on her knees, and so that there's not enough space to milk her. And it would take, maybe an hour to milk 10 goats. It would take an extra 45 minutes to milk her.
Yikes.
So we now have a goat hoist. That we can lift this goat up and hang it up from. We can hang it from this hoist so that she can be milked and not squat down.
Is that like a cherry picker for lifting engines out of cars, or?
But not as sophisticated. But
Okay.
Yes,
cool.
It is. So the name of this goat.
Yeah.
Just happens to be the thing that I'm going to be talking about in the middle of the show.
All right.
Or the person, and that is Kamala Khan.
All right. Cool.
So got some interesting information, especially with the first release of Miss Marvel.
I need to check that out. Yeah.
It's for something that I thought, and I will talk a little bit in the middle, but for something that I thought was going to be geared for tweens. Surprisingly intelligent, empathetic, mature television.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, just because it's aimed towards tweens doesn't mean that it can't be that. I mean, tweens are a bit more on it than we think. But, I mean, that's just because I have a tween who is, I don't know. Really,
a tween.
Yeah, a tween,
Who is more intelligent, empathetic, and mature than we thought?
Yeah. No, Dusseldorf is, way more. No, Barbacoa. Barbacoa, not Dusseldorf. Dusseldorf's the little girl. Barbacoa is far more sympathetic and on it than. Yeah, no. I'm always surprised when Barbacoa says something, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I didn't reach that level of sympathy towards people till I was 20. Jeez.
Well, the next generation, we are safe in their hands.
Yeah.
Hey, let's talk about a unempathetic family.
Let's. Yeah. All right. But first, a message from Tazza Chocolate, Somerset, Massachusetts, Lovecraft Country, stone ground chocolate, vegan. Don't let that make you grossed out or anything like that. They use cashew milk instead of regular milk, and it is amazing stuff. Check the show notes to find out more.
How do they milk those cashews?
Very carefully. Very.
Do they have to put them in hoist?
I don't think so, unless it's a ton. Honestly, how you milk a cashew is you put a specific amount of cashews in a certain amount of water, and you blend it together and run it through a series of filters until you get something that can be used. And you can even kind of make something almost like a heavy cream with cashew and a combination of bean water is the best way I can describe it. It's the the water that is drained from when you have beans, garbanzo beans, or like black beans or something like that. Anyway,
that's not how you milk a goat.
That is not how you milk a goat. But I want to say I have made like kind of a thick, heavy, using coconut milk and also using cashew milk, a thick, heavy kind of like cream substitute for vegan recipes in the past, because I have a culinary background and also I'm cool like that, but that's not what we're talking about.
Chocolate.
Yeah. No. And Taza chocolate, Somerset, Massachusetts, Stone Ground chocolate. They have so many cool flavors, so many cool ways to use their chocolate. And I highly recommend it for whether or not you want to make ganache, whether or not you want to make, I don't know, truffles or something like that. It's a really good high quality chocolate for doing chocolatiering work with. And I would put it right up there with one of my personal favorite chocolate companies out of Seattle, Scharfenberger, who is not a sponsor, but Taza Chocolate makes a high quality chocolate that I just wish I could get in like 5 kilo bricks so I could do some chocolatiering with. But you know who we should talk about right now?
Who should we talk about?
We should talk about a group of folks in Massachusetts that aren't necessarily they're in it for the money, but they're not there for the people. They're there for their subterranean clan off the coast of Plum Island, but
and who would that be?
That would be the Marsh family.
Okay.
And what do we know about the Marsh family, Dave?
So, first of all, the Marsh family, of course, appears in the Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yes.
And one thing we kind of maybe forget about Lovecraft, he has this he often has this very witty, love for puns.
Sure.
And we see that in one very obvious sort of Lovecraft character or family in Shadow over Innsmouth. The Gilmans. The Gilman house.
I was going to say Marsh in general is also kind of like a water pun.
It is, exactly.
Gilman, no, definitely.
Definitely, the water. So I don't think Lovecraft gets a lot of credit for his wit. But it's his pun. He's being punny here.
Oh, definitely.
And I think just like Gilman and Marsh are going to be prominent New England family names.
Oh, yeah.
So they will, he's using real family names, but he selects these ones specifically because they're puns.
Yeah. Do we have any other examples of this in Lovecraft, do you think?
Well, we see this more in his letters. We see this in his letters when, he's talking about things like Two Gun Bob. We forget, I think, that, Herbert West, Reanimator, was published in a satire magazine in Homebrew.
Yeah.
So, I think we see it throughout Lovecraft's writing, but and a lot of it is more is behind the scenes stuff.
Sure, yeah. Quick question, Dave, out of context. Who do you think is the funniest of the 3 primary weird fiction people that we think of when we think of Clark Ashton Smith, Robert E. Howard, and H.P. Lovecraft? Who do you think had the, I don't know, more prevalent sense of humor when it came to their writing? Whether it be My example for Smith would be Mount Vormeath Adreth.
Yes. So I think, again, you're going to see this. I'm not going to say more. I think you're going to see distinctive, different versions.
Okay.
And I think that Smith was giggling the whole time he wrote the Seven Guises.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I think he just thought that was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
So the Robert E. Howard is going to write, most of his money is going to be coming from, that he's going to get writing, is not from Conan.
Yeah.
But Elridge Breckinger, which is this, guy that's basically Jethro Bodine prototype, country boy who just lucks out, keeps getting into fights, and but he also does this poem that he wrote about this choir girl who's sitting, singing, and everybody's making fun because she just can't sing. She says, "I don't care," but she's thinking to herself, "I don't care. I'm only here because I want to have sex with the preacher." And again, that might not be very funny. I mean, but that was Robert E. Howard had this little 14-year-old boy sense of humor, at least in the beginning, and so it was there. And then I think, like a Lovecraft example, I think it was called The Fight of the Century.
Yeah. Which
it was sort of like a letter between him and Robert E. Barlow, where he was having different people they knew in their circles all fighting like a fictitious version of boxing of Robert E. Howard. So they all had their own little sense of humor.
Okay.
And they were, like the three members of the D&D group that all laughed at their own jokes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that it's not really specifically stated.
Yeah.
Other tin Polynesia.
Okay. All right.
And it's a whole different. Show where we'll talk about the different books and stuff that Lovecraft read about Polynesia.
Okay.
But it basically, I think, describes it as a Polynesian wife. So right. somewhere in the South Pacific.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Very cool. All right. So then we have Obed brings back the promise of golden fish and a Polynesian wife that people don't see necessarily. And that kind of begins a tradition in the Marsh family in Innsmouth, Massachusetts. Or Taxachusetts.
Yes.
And so we then have the beginning of what is known as the Innsmouth look.
Yes.
And we also have the beginning of the Church of Dagon in Massachusetts, at least. Other fishy things going on, pun intended.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and so the esoteric order of Dagon, I think we talked about in the past, it usurps the positions of the Christian churches.
Yes.
And so much so that at the end it physically takes over their buildings.
Yeah.
This is, of course, the shadow over Innsmouth.
Correct.
And then we've got to remember that Obed is going to be rather prolific. And he is going to have, among other children or descendants, is going to be Robert Olmsted.
Yes.
Now, Olmsted's name does not appear in any of the final draft that's published.
Correct.
He does, I think, appear in some of the early drafts, and then finally or in letters. He will write and say in letters that this is my character.
Yeah.
So, and it's sort of interesting that fate is going to make Olmsted find this destiny, because there's something inside him that's not only changing him and making him this fish monster. 98-year-old or so story, spoilers, but it also makes him a genealogist, a historian, an antiquarian. He wants to find, there's something that in him that is burning to find his family.
Correct.
And he gets more than he planned for.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Now, that would not been uncommon in the 20s. People were finally sort of, I mean, it really comes to America when Roots is published, but people began to start of being interested in genealogy and who their family were in the 20s.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a American thing for sure, is kind of being like, golly gee, my family's been in America for so long, but where the heck did we come from? And some people I know are more fortunate than others when it comes to finding out where their families are or what their families did beforehand. One of my friends who's been on the show before, whose name I'm not going to say because then I'm going to let people guess of which of my friends, they did family research and they found that his father was, or his great-grandfather was the last person hung for train robbing in America. And like another friend of mine like found out that there was like a lot of like their great-grandfather was known for all kinds of like petty larceny and just weird stuff like that, and other people I know is like, oh yeah, no, my great-grandmother, or no, actually her grandmother was adopted by a wealthy family in Louisiana to just be a servant child, because she was the child of anarchists from the Ukraine that were shipped back, but since the child was born in America, it had to stay in an orphanage, and then ended up with some fancy family in Louisiana that, you know, they weren't allowed to have slaves anymore, but hey, immigrant children, that's not a problem. But yeah, just weird stuff like that.
You can find some interesting things, maybe stuff you didn't want to know.
Oh yeah, no. I've like found out stuff about my family, and it's like, well, that makes sense. I mean, that totally makes sense. That's, and it's like the uncomfortable stuff. It's like, yeah, no, that's. Oh man, yeah, no. I have a conversation about Ken Hite where he's like, "This is your family crest," and I'm like, yeah, and he's like, do you know what this means? And I'm like, kind of, and he's like, yeah, we shouldn't do this episode, and I'm like, okay.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so
now that's kind of what they say about the Marsh families and, you know, the Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yeah,
but one of my favorite non-Lovecraftian stories was published about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, not non-Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos stories. Is Kim Newman's The Big Fish.
Oh.
And that is so that was originally published, I think, in 1992 in Inner Zone magazine. But where I first read it, and people who are interested can easily get a copy, is Tor's Cthulhu 2000.
Oh yeah.
Great collection of late 20th century mythos stories.
Yeah, I think you can get that on your Kindle even right now. Like if you just,
I'm sure you can.
Yeah. I'm sure there's even probably an audiobook out there for people who like audiobooks.
Oh, cool. And it's set during a real historical event called the Battle of Los Angeles.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with this story or the Battle of Los Angeles.
I'll let you regale everyone with the information about the Battle of Los Angeles.
So the Battle of Los Angeles is an actual event that happened, I believe, early 1942, right not too far after Pearl Harbor, and which probably was basically mass hysteria, where basically all the anti-aircraft batteries throughout, Southern California thought they were being invaded by the Japanese, and they just kept firing and firing all night. And I think there was like 40,000 rounds fired. And there's a very famous picture, people, Google Times photo, Battle of Los Angeles, where a reporter in the LA Times goes out, and it's got to be like the searchlights on a temperature inversion or something, but it looks all the world like they're shooting these tracer rounds at this big round desk object.
Yeah.
But it is. But it's true event. It really happened. Spielberg's 1941 is loosely based on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But in this version, it's the government attacking the deep ones. And again, this is, a 30-year-old story, so, spoiling it. But it's basically a noir detective story.
Okay.
And the detective meets Janet Marsh.
Okay.
Who has moved to Hollywood from, Massachusetts. And she's this very interesting movie star. And in this, the esoteric Order of Dagon existed in California, so it implies this is at least national, if not global, organization.
Sure thing.
And Janet Marsh stars in Tarzan serials as the Jungle Queen.
Okay.
And she has this just gorgeous, beautiful body. But, the detective describes her face, as being sort of, hideous and looking like Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
And she is also a hybrid. And it's turned out that she's getting closer and closer to, returning to her, her offshore cousins.
Sure.
And I think that's one of the better post-Lovecraft uses of not only the deep ones, but of the Marsh family.
Okay, yeah, definitely. I like that.
But other than that, I really don't have much left about the Marshes.
I mean, they're responsible for the Order of Dagon in Massachusetts. So yeah, we've got the Marsh family all over. We have Asenath Marsh in Thing at the Doorstep. Do we have
or she's related to the Marsh. She's actually a Waite.
Yeah. No, she's a Waite. But yeah, no, her mother's side of the family is related to the Marshes.
Our Marshes.
Yeah. And she has that Innsmouth look.
Yes.
But she's also supposed to be like stunningly beautiful, but also has the Innsmouth look. So I don't know what that means. I think that just means like she looks like Betty Boop. She's just this like big-headed, big-eyed, tiny-nosed.
And I think that's a great example. And I think that, I mean, there's obviously ties, but I think that Lovecraft is sort of using this Polynesian features as being exotic.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, that's the Marsh family. What do we got next going on, Dave? What are you talking about?
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about Kamala Khan, both Miss Marvel and the goat that doesn't want to be milked.
Ooh, cool! All right, I have to check that out.
It is a lot better than I thought it would be.
Nice.
I would say it's amazing.
Yeah, cool, very cool. Well, I'm going to talk about some comic book stuff in recommendations when we get to that. But up after this part, after ads and such, you and I will be talking about the Mego and
yes,
how to use them in your role-playing games. So, yeah. Let's go, and you'll talk about Ms. Marvel, and then we'll talk about the Mego, and all right, so we'll talk to you whatnot in a bit. Okay, here we go.
This is Dave's Corner of the Podcast. It is awesome and it's gonna go fast. It's not the interview part. It's not the part where DB talks forever. It's Dave's Corner of the Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is David and I'm doing well. But then again, you knew that. So while you've got me on the show now, gonna talk about one of my favorite, not only Marvel, but comic book characters ever. And that is Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. So you guys all know that how you can tell if I really like something or not is if I name a goat after it, or her, or him. And yes, I absolutely do have a goat named Kamala Khan. Now that's the barn name, that's the name that we call her. She's registered, because it's usually a different name that she's registered on than the name you call a goat in a barn. So her registered name is Miss Marvel, and her barn name is Kamala Khan. So before we get too much in about, like I said, one of my favorite all-time characters, I'll talk a little bit about the goat, who I love. This is actually the oldest daughter of, the first goat I ever owned, Kleist, and so, Kamala Khan was one of the first names I used. Kamala's got a little problem. Kamala the goat, that is. She doesn't like to milk. Now, apparently, this is not an uncommon issue, but it's the first time we've run across it. So what she does is she just doesn't like it. It hurts her. We thought maybe she had mastitis or maybe an infection, but no, it's just stubborn goat just doesn't like the way it feels. So what she does is she gets down on her knees, so you can't milk her while she's on the stand, eating grain. So what we basically have to do is get a hoist and this sling that you can put her legs in and hold her up so that she can be milked. It's not quite like a cherry picker or a goat picker, but kinda is. So that's the saga of Kamala Khan, the goat. Let's talk about Kamala Khan, the Marvel superhero, and the new Disney Plus show, Miss Marvel. Now, and we're going to talk a little bit more because the show does have some uphill battles it has to fight. And there are, I love it. I think it's probably the best, just on seeing the first episode, the best Disney Plus, at least Marvel series, but maybe best thing that Disney Plus has put out any one single episode. And there may be some light spoilers. Kamala Khan is in high school, but we're not going to be really spoiling anything. But I get there's some reasons why people might not really get behind the show as much as I do. And, I mean, it could be stuff like, you know, you had a terrible time in high school, and just thinking about high school and seeing it on the TV screen causes traumatic flashbacks. Maybe you just don't like Marvel, you prefer DC. Okay, sure. Maybe you just wanted something darker and grittier. Okay, yeah, no, I get that. Maybe you're a huge fan of Miskatonic and just you're kind of disappointed that they've tweaked her powers around a little bit, as well as sort of changed her origin. You want her to be an Inhuman. You know, okay, hey, you know, I get it. But let's talk a little bit about the character before we go into the show. Kamala Khan was created in 2013. And I have to admit, you know, when I first read about the character coming out, I thought, you know, it was just kind of pandering. I really did. It wasn't until I started reading these, you know, graphic novels and the different comics that I realized, you know, this is not just a superhero and we're gonna dye the color of the skin and give it a sort of superficial Islamic background, because she was that, but she was so much more. Now, I am not female. I am not Islamic. I did not grow up in New Jersey. But I feel really connected to her. And one of the reasons I feel connected is, despite all that, she is, first of all, a very fleshed out character, but she's also a geek. She, you know, she writes, you know, Avengers fanfic. She, you know, on the TV show, she has her own YouTube channel. And that appealed to me. I love the character. She is not perfect, but that's what makes her so human. And I love the character so much that I got not only my youngest daughter, but my niece, I bought them the first graphic novels and gave them as a gift because I wanted them to see that even though they may have different color skin, there were different religion, but that there was characters that they could identify with. And I really got a shout out to Iman Vellani, who plays. She's actually a little older than her character. In reality, she's 19. Her birthday's coming up in September. Then she'll be 20. And one of the things that I think that they did so well is she's as cute as a button, just adorable, but they in no way sexualize her. But that doesn't mean she's not cute. Disney did kind of the same thing with Haley Steinfeld's Kate Bishop. Of course, that character is 22. She's a little older, a little mature, but again, they made her cute and attractive, not in a sexualized way. In some of the better episodes, I think, of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I think they kind of do that in some of the better episodes with Karina Shipka, but then, of course, they kind of cross into Riverdale territory, and they kind of blow some episodes there, too. But kudos to Disney for doing that. So, despite as much as I love the character, the concept, Miss Marvel's got some uphill battles that they're going to fight. And one of them is a lot of competition. I mean, it came out, 4 days after Stranger Things Season 4, same day as Episode 4 of Obi-Wan. There's just a lot of things. People are, getting over COVID. They want to go out. They want to see movies. want to just be their friend with their friends. So there's a lot more competition for viewers out there. Another thing is that, a lot of people are just maybe Marveled out or superheroed out. And that's one of the problems when a studio consistently churns out, quality stuff. You get used to it. And I get it. A lot of people are, they want something else. A lot of people are just over superheroes. Another is, in a way, I think she's more of the comic book character. It is more of a niche audience. And like I said, I bought them. A lot of friends bought them. A lot of, especially, male, female nerds, we identified with her. But she doesn't have, say, the name recognition of Captain America or the Hulk or even Scarlet Witch. So a lot of people, this will be their introduction to her. And that I could see a lot of if you already have an interest and you're invested in the character, you're more likely to watch it than not. But then again, I think before James Gunn's movie went out, a lot of people just didn't know who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. May have heard of them, but didn't know them as characters. So that's definitely things to go over that. Another thing is that people are seeing a pro-gay agenda in the show. And now people wore pride shirt, but, people are saying that it's a bad show because they are accusing Kamala Khan of being gay, which that's not canon. There's nothing in the show that I was it. And if it did, okay, bring it on. Who cares? But, people are just making up things not to like it. Now, they decide that they make Kamala gay. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But I've never seen anything that made me think they were going that way with the character. And if they did, who cares? Another thing I think that is people are concerned is, honestly, I hate to say it, but there's some degree racism. There are a lot of basically people giving it a bad rating because she's Pakistani. They don't like Islam, they don't like a brown-skinned girl from New Jersey, or they don't like the political stance that Pakistan often takes. And, I could understand that. But if not liking the political stance of America was the reason that I didn't like, a character, then, I wouldn't like any characters that were, from the United States. So, I completely get that, people don't want or disagree with the Pakistani government. I disagree with what they do quite often. But that doesn't make a difference. First of all, she's Pakistani American. She is as American as Apple Pie and DC Comics. But, some people deliberately, have, tried to lower the score of Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, and others by giving it a low rating. And here's that, sure, I look at ratings and guides, see how many people liked it. But this is, Sociology 101. Any type of poll that requires people to respond is not going to be scientific or accurate. There are people who dislike it because she's Muslim. there is a Facebook group called, Christians Against Kamala Khan. Now, I get that maybe it's kind of a put on because it's run by Wade Wilson, who, Wade Wilson, if you didn't know, that's Deadpool's name. And if you're going to object to a comic book, a character, or a TV show because of, your religious beliefs and their religious beliefs, maybe you shouldn't, pick as a pseudonym the name of a pansexual assassin. So maybe it's a troll, but okay. There are honestly people, and I hate to say this, but in the 21st century, that will not watch a show because it shows in a positive light someone else's religion because it's different, or someone of a different color of skin. So I get that. That's just something that we live with in the 21st century. Now, there's one tweak, and just before I go, that I want to talk about. I actually like her family more in the series so far than I do in the comic. I think they're more fleshed out. I think they're more sympathetic. And I get this, a lot of people disagree. This is just basically rebellious teen, old world parents don't understand. But, my friends that were children of first-gen immigrants from all over the world, they see this. They understand. And, I mean, I'm sure that I did things that'll bring the wrath of my children, as we grow older. So it's a universal. It's actually something that, once again, I gets me closer to the character. Now brings me more to her, but also more, I respect her more because of it. But I like this change. It does make Kamala at times come off a little bit more of a brat. The first episode was based on one of the later graphic novels. It is called Generation Y, W-H-Y, and I think that's very important. Her parents come from a family of faith, a family of a generation that accepts things on its face value. But come on, her kindred spirits, they don't. And for them, it's not only knowing if something is right, the reason why it's right, why they should follow a code, a tradition, why, they need to understanding. Because without this understanding, ideas, dogma, philosophies, beliefs, they become tried. They become mutated in ways that the original idea wasn't meant to. So, in all, I'm hoping that it will hold out. But I am really enjoying Miss Marvel, the series, and hope to see her in more comics. Hey, this is Dave, and just going to turn you over to me and DB so we can talk a little role-playing in Dungeons & Dragons.
Prepare for a spine-tingling, nerve-shattering podcast featuring all your favorite monsters. You won't believe your ears when you listen to Monster Kid Radio. Here are your hosts, Derek M. Cook, and his ever-rotating stable of guests discuss your favorite classic and sometimes not-so-classic monster movies. Subscribe to Monster Kid Radio through iTunes or Stitcher, or visit monsterkidradio.net before the next weekly episode of Monster Kid Radio. Go through the archives for interviews with Sarah Karloff, Victoria Bryce, and Joel Hodgson. Listen to discussions about movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Island of Terror, and King Kong. And don't forget convention coverage from Monster Bash and the HP Lovecraft Film Festival. Classic monsters, modern talk, and the head of Rondo Hatton. Only on Monster Kid Radio.
Hey everyone, it's me, DB. New sponsor on the show, Glarry. Glarry offers a great price and better quality goods and services for music lovers. Are you looking for good prices, free shipping, 100% quality guarantee? Glarry's got you covered. Guitars, bass guitars, mandolins. They've got saxophones, trumpets, drums. They've got guitar cases, amplifiers, all the stuff that you need without having to break the bank. Inexpensive doesn't have to mean cheap. Check out the show notes to find more about Glarry. 20-watt amplifiers for under $50. Hard cases for your electric guitar for under $80. Guitars themselves for under $90. Come on, folks, check out the show notes. Get a Glarry. Thank you once again for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. You can help show your support by going to the show notes and following any of the links that'll tell you how to support the show and how to support our guests. And thank you to all of our guests who you can find in the show notes. Rate, review, subscribe, and remember, patrons get priority access to asking us questions, suggesting topics, even, I don't know, submitting stuff. Actually, you don't have to be a patron to submit anything. That's how Dave got on the show, and that's how you can get on the show too. It's the People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends. Thank you for listening. Back to the show. Hey everyone. So we are back. Dave, how was your break?
I was surprisingly good.
Good. I ran around the block and I stretched my arms, and you know,
I see they're a little longer.
Yeah, the cemetery's looking pretty good these days. Everything's going good. The contractors I've got going to mow it and whatnot for me, they're doing a great job. And those pit holes that came up like 6 months ago, can't even tell they were there. So no need to worry about that. The mayor says, hey, everyone come back to the graveyard. It's perfectly safe. So
the ones that mysteriously look like they were dug from beneath.
We're not allowed to talk about that, Dave.
Oh,
sorry. So, Migo, yeah.
Migo.
So the Migo, my favorite fungoid lobster space race that uses Pluto as an outpost in our solar system, but also does active mining on Earth. So a little bit of tangent before we get into how to use them in role-playing games. Sure, go for it.
So Lovecraft, the Migo, the colors out of space.
Yeah.
Lovecraft definitely hated this kind of concept that aliens are basically people with antennas or green faces.
Yeah.
Lovecraft really had this idea, which I think was ahead of his time, that aliens would be just that, would be aliens.
Yeah. He would have hated Star Trek.
He would have hated it. Now, in the 70s,
most episodes
independently, this is going to be championed by Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
Now there's actually, though, the pendulum's swinging back, and there's a new thought that I've been experiencing like last 5 years, but a new school of thought that probably existed before longer.
Oh, yeah.
And the question is, if you're in what they call the Goldilocks zone, a planet around a star, where it would be habitable, and to have an Earth-type environment, why would evolution be different in space than it is here?
Oh, yeah. No, you're definitely probably going to have your squid, your crabs, and your jellyfish for sure.
but the same thing. Why wouldn't you have, your apex race be bipedal? Why would it not have, hands? Why would it not have, two eyes for depth perception? So this, though, the Migo are definitely come from this thought that aliens will be alien.
Yeah, no. It's I do kind of like how the fact that the Migo are kind of crustacean-like, which kind of like, and they can modify their bodies, and it's, I don't know, I kind of like...
And they can modify human bodies.
And they can modify human bodies, for sure. They can take a human brain and put it into a cylinder and then hook it up to lo-fi cameras and sound systems, and heck, they can even make it so that brain in a cylinder doesn't have to deal with the horrors of deep space.
Yeah. And there's this sort of almost throw-out paragraph in Whispers in the Darkness.
Yeah.
Where, and again, this is a unreliable narrator.
Sure.
The Migo are not at war with human beings.
No.
There is a select few who are the worshippers of the yellow sign that have declared war.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great, plot device. And I think there are even a couple of, actual Chaosium Call Cthulhu mythos, adventures written about this, where people are caught up in the war between the Migo and the King in Yellow.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great plot device that you can have either, 1920s.
Oh, sure.
Or, in a medieval campaign.
Yeah, definitely. I like that.
Now, and I've gone through just a couple of different versions of the Migo in different role-playing games. And one is Pathfinder, of course, has really embraced the mythos. And so they have fed out, the Migo as a race, as a basically monster.
Yeah.
And spatted them out. Recently, though, I was in a forum, and someone was asking for the stats for Migo in 2D20 Star Wars. Not Star Wars, 2D20 Star Trek.
Oh, Star Trek. That's even more interesting. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so one of the things, though, that work, and this is this idea that, they're not demons, they're aliens.
Yeah, definitely.
But it works out because Migo actually do appear in some other 2D20 games, and they're not perfectly translated from those games into Star Trek, but they are statted in Conan, which I think they make a great Conan opponent.
Yeah,
and as well as Octoon Cthulhu.
Yeah. I was thinking about like Migo for Star Trek though, and it's like, oh, that's dumb, and I'm like, well, if Romulans can steal Spock's brain, they must have learned it from somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and,
no.
You know what? And throw your players a curve.
Sure.
We're used to the Ferengi. Mm-hmm. We are used to the Klingons.
Of course.
Now we've got something that doesn't match to to what we think of Star Trek, and I don't think it breaks the game.
Oh yeah. And something I wanted to say is, I think Mego technology is something that you can throw into your cyberpunk, your Shadowrun, as like something that people discover as like, wait a minute, how did we make this weird leap from like beige towers to like implants and computers in your head and all this other stuff, all this other like bio modifications, cyber modifications and stuff like that. How did humanity make this weird, huge leap in just like 20 years? And if like you do like kind of like a cyberpunk Call of Cthulhu crossover kind of thing, you can be like, oh, it's all Mego technology. And then, you know, you can like maybe like have like a couple of characters, like maybe your team is based off of people who don't have any of this technology, but also, you know, do have skills. And then like you have a campaign where people's biomods, cyberware start fighting against them. And then you have to have like some sort of Delta Green kind of like, or maybe just like renegades out there, or whatever, going against the megacorps and whatnot who sided with the Cthulhu mythos instead of humanity. And now it's your job to run around with a Daikote katana lopping off people before they become too much Tetsuo. So, I don't know. That's just a thought.
So there is a game out there that has that.
Oh, are we talking the one that's like kind of a combination of Cthulhu mythos and Macross or Voltron?
So you're thinking about Cthulhu tech.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of.
Which does. But there is also, GURPS has a Cyber Cthulhu.
Oh, good to know.
Which they do a lot of that, and it's all sort of, it's nice there. It's statted out, and you know, another thought is
GURPS is amazing.
Yes, and so. And I think it came out about 20 years ago, but you can still get it. It's set for 3rd edition, which honestly has some things, especially if you're going to run a pulpy game, some advantages over 4E. And yes, you can bring all sorts of other things in, but, you know, one thought is would be AIs.
Yeah.
So what do the Mego do with the brains after they remove them from the body?
Yeah.
They turn them into AIs.
Oh. I like that.
Another one, though, and I think those are some great ideas you have. Uh-huh. I do like, I mean, obviously, Megos are a huge thing in Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I remember we had a big New Year's Call of Cthulhu game. And so I had, you know, the Megos were, you know, the main creatures in it. But they're a little bit different in Delta Green.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about the Delta Green Mego is that they realize that they are alien.
Oh, yeah.
So they create genetically the Greys to act as an intermediary between them and the humans. So that's another sort of unique spin on Megos for gaming.
Oh, definitely. And if you have any kind of science fiction game, you can kind of take that concept of the Mego creating biomechanoids of some sort, something that will work with your game. what if the Migo created something of, like, I don't know, robots that can transform into cars? What if the Migo we can do this on and on and on, but it's like the Migo could create something that people are like, oh, this is trustworthy because they have this long, terrible backstory, and I must help them. Whether it be like, a sad lost alien or who loves like McDonald's and soda, or one that knows how to hack a speak and spell to, send a cosmic message. The Migo could create all kinds of things that just lie to us about what they are and what they want, just to get to us. And I understand that the Migo, it's something that's definitely talked about in Call of Cthulhu books of gameplay, is that they don't understand the leaps in logic that humanity makes when they discover stuff. And also the Migo have like deleted their own memory of their culture, depending on who you've talked to. But yeah.
No, absolutely. And I'm sorry, I sort of misspoke there. That the GURPS game I was talking about, it's Cthulhu Punk.
Okay, cool.
Cthulhu Punk. And they've, recently, like 12 years ago, they redid the cover and everything. So you can still get them at least, usually probably used, but definitely PDFs.
Okay. That sounds like fun.
And here's the thing that GURPS did. So GURPS is one of the first cyberpunk games, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so they create Cyberworld, which is their version.
Yeah.
And there's this very advanced, a very well built world building. And in it, there's things like everyone dies of some mysterious bioplague in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
The alt-right take over America basically on a second wave of satanic panic. Russia and Japan realize, hey, you guys got the tech, we got the manpower, and they combine and become like the power block of the world.
Oh, wow.
So what they did for Cthulhu Punk, though, is they kept the same world.
Okay.
They kept the same world, but then they just introduced things like, was Australia killed by some sort of bioplague?
Yeah.
Or was it the old ones? Are these people that are chasing goth kids and, pagans and trying to throw them in jail?
Yeah.
Are they really the good guys? Are they really trying to fight, some supernatural force? Or are they corrupted and realize this is the only defense that Earth has against them?
Gotcha.
So you could do that if you're running a GURPS cyberpunk. You could slowly but surely introduce Cthulhu Punk, and you could even, like I said, make it tech. Make it biotech.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like you could do that in your Shadowrun or cyberpunk campaign, or any kind of tech campaign you have where like you introduce like some sort of like low-tech cyberware or low-tech bioware that's going to boost you up pretty quick, but then you find out that there's like some terrible drawback to it, like it can move and think on its own, but I mean, what moves and thinks on its own is your muscles and your body. When you're not awake, it moves around and does things that you don't want to do, but you're asleep, and anyway, there's.
So I want to throw out another one.
Go for it.
So let's say you got a modern adventure.
Sure.
And we don't, especially set it in COVID. We don't communicate face to face as much, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, this helpful, ally that's helping you, but you never met them because it's, they're just computer messages or maybe even Zoom. And it turns out it's a brain in a jar.
Yeah. I was
6 or 7 adventures in, you realize that, this person you learn to trust, no longer has their human body.
Or you could do some sort of like 70s pulpy kind of thing, like a Charlie's Angels kind of thing. But like everyone assumes that Charlie is, somewhere else and the voice is coming out of the big wooden box. But actually it's just a brain in the box.
Excellent. And a final version, and
Bosley's Bosley's a deep one, but
yeah. In Cthulhu Punk, there is a 100-point disadvantage. Disembodied brain.
Yeah.
So, what if your characters all start off that way?
Ooh.
And you guys, you may not be able to get your body back.
Yeah.
But the first adventure or the session 0 is basically getting you back to some kind of body.
Oh, interesting.
And then escaping.
Okay. Or putting your consciousness in someone else's consciousness, kind of thing.
Yeah, or something. Or escaping on the internet or downloading to a robot.
Sure, yeah. And if we're talking about like downloading to robots or droids or whatever, we can go anywhere with that. Like, if if we're talking about uploading consciousness into robots or AI or mainframes or whatever, no, that's pretty cool stuff. I like that. I like that a lot. Something I was thinking about, though, was how to use this in D&D, and something that popped up is like how to use the Migo in D&D. What if someone has been selling like a fungal armor, and it's like you someone hires you to find the source of this fungal armor, and it's like, don't wear it because it's messing people up really bad over in this, like 2 towns over, like next city on the other side of the mountains. They had this huge fungal infection and it killed a bunch of people, and we're not quite sure what all happened, but like there's a town that's just like dead and there's fungus everywhere, and it's like, find out if it's this or if it's something else. And it's like, it could be related to it, but it's actually Migo that you end up finding, either on purpose or by accident. Maybe some weird technologies start showing up in your D&D campaign, like lightning guns, and like someone who should not be able to take on some sort of creature or person is able to do so with a lightning gun. Like maybe some peasant shows up and like takes down king's guards with a lightning gun and almost kills the king. And you've gone on some adventures in the past, and like the king is like, hey, this shabby nobody thought that they could get me, and we're talking about like mushrooms and lobsters, and attack me with a lightning gun or like some sort of like Migo weapon of some sort. And, then you got to go figure out what the hell's going on. And maybe it's tied to some fungal armor. Maybe it's tied to some sort of weird community that like is like hidden way, way, way the hell out. And then you have like communication with some town elder who's like, oh, I'm sick and I'm in the dark. And then the next day you wake up and it's a wax hands and face and a blanket. That sort of trope. Or maybe there's some sort of new robot in your Star Wars or Fallout campaign that's just pretty much like a jar. A brain in a jar that's hooked up to a bunch of electronics or something. And there's a lot of stuff you can do with a brain in a jar, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I thought maybe on a D&D.
Oh, yeah?
You got this guy who's got this, basically what you think is a wand of lightning. And so they get to this plan, well, we'll disarm him by using a dispel magic spell.
Yeah.
And it gets cast, and no, it's technology, so it's still working.
You could always have some sort of like summoning spell for Migo, which is like not even an actual summoning spell, but just like physical thing, like a staff of summoning for like Migo, but it's actually just kind of like do. You know, like just like be like, hey, can you guys come down? Oh yeah, totally.
No, so I think there's a lot to be done, and even characters that are familiar with the Migo, depending on how you introduce them.
Oh yeah.
It would be surprised. And one last thought I was thinking too is that we know from the Whispers in the Darkness that Migos are miners.
Yeah.
So you've got a mine on a high mountain. That's a dungeon.
Oh yeah. No, one thing I wanted to say is that you could definitely use Migos for dungeon creatures because the fact that they are mining for stuff. Like you could have you could throw Migos into the Underdark of Forgotten Realms and they would perfectly fit in. They are an alien race that is mining for something. They are an alien race. They're still a monster and they still have monstrous capabilities even though it's based off of technology. And you could throw them into any dungeon, whether it be Dark Sun, whether it be Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, your homebrew dungeon, like whatever the equivalent of a dungeon is in a fantasy game, not a fantasy game, but a sci-fi game, like I don't know, like going through a series of laboratories, going down deeper and deeper until you find out, oh my god, they've got aliens, but they're not Greys. Or you find the Greys, but then you find out that the Greys are actually transmitting like to some mountains off in the distance where there's actually some sort of Migo laboratory that's kind of watching the whole thing. You know, like that episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where they've got kind of like a laboratory that watches stuff and like data. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about if you watch
I know what you're
Next Generation.
About.
But yeah.
So Insurrection?
Yeah. I was like, I can't remember if that's an episode or a movie, but yeah, I think it's a movie. Purple Bazooka Wharf. But yeah. Some ideas for the Migo.
No, I definitely agree. And just throwing this out there, if it's going to be in the Underdark, their genetic engineers make albino blind Migo with echolocation.
Ooh, oh man! Now I'm just thinking about like what kind of stuff the Migo. Oh, barrier peaks. Like if that was like a crashed Migo ship and everything's like bioengineered. Like I'm starting to get like alien vibes then if I'm thinking about like bioengineered like monsters and stuff like that. Like
absolutely.
Xenomorphs and stuff like that could be like bioengineered monsters created by the Migo. You know, the Migo could create all kinds of stuff for what they consider like a positive active lifestyle, which is like, oh, this takes this out of the air and this puts this into the air, which would be deadly for humans. I mean, just throwing stuff out there.
And, you know, there is a really good new last year or two Aliens RPG.
Ooh.
It would not be difficult to create Migo for that game.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. And I don't know. I think it's kind of a little bit maybe cooler that Migo created xenomorphs than like those big dorks in Prometheus. But that's just my opinion.
If I were going to talk about that, that would be another show.
Yeah. All right. So now, speaking of another show, let's move on to the next segment I want to talk to you about. What have you been watching? Anything you have to recommend?
So, I was sick. I was able to watch some TV, and it's on Netflix.
Uh-huh.
It's a very good Belgium crime, cybercrime procedural.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's called Unit 42.
Okay.
And so basically, there's two old school detectives, and then a guy and a girl, young. They're the tech savvy ones, and their team got assigned randomly a number, but they're explaining to the new leader. They go, we're Unit 42 because we're the answer to everything. And he just like stares through them. They go, Hitchhiker's Guide. He just like stares there like they're talking. It's a very good, almost overly so character-driven series.
Gotcha.
There's 2 seasons, maybe a third coming out. Only one season is translated into English right now, and because it's it's Belgium, so it's French.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. The dubbing is very good. There are like a couple of times where the mouth was moving and they weren't saying anything, but it was so rare that I was shocked when it happened.
Cool. Let's see. Lately, I have been playing some Project Zomboid, which I don't know if you're familiar with or not, but the whole premise...
I am not.
The whole premise of the game is it's an isometric view, and you wake up somewhere, and your job is to survive as long as you can in a zombie apocalypse. And when you die, which is pretty inevitable, it's like, this is how long you lived, and this is how many zombies you killed. But right before you start the game, it's like, this is a story about how you died. And because it's not a game that you can necessarily win unless I believe you put in some mods, but it's a game that you can modify as much as you want. You can play it on the easiest mode you want, but you have to work really, really, really hard to survive in this game. Even if you take out the zombies, I found out. I've been playing it without zombies, just like this person who's like alone in a post-apocalyptic world where everything's like gone and the only thing that's left is canned food. And it's like, oh, well, you've been working really hard and now you're sweating and now it's getting cold and your clothes are wet, but it's cold and you're starting to feel kind of yucky. It's like, oh, okay, now I got to change my clothes. But the other thing, let's see, what else? Stranger Things I've been watching.
Yes, excellent 4th season.
Yeah, Obi-Wan Kenobi I've been watching, which has been pretty good.
Amazing.
Yeah. And the thing that just like popped into my oh, you should check this out was on Hulu. If you like punk like I like punk, it's the story of the Sex Pistols called Pistol, I think on Hulu.
Yes, I have not seen it yet.
And it's more of the Steve Jones angle of the Sex Pistols, as opposed to in the past it's been more like Malcolm McLaren telling his story or Johnny Rotten, John Lydon telling his story. But this is like Steve Jones's story, and like, I don't know, maybe one of these days we'll get the Glenn or the Paul story of it, and we've gotten like the very tail end of kind of like a romanticized version of the Sid Vicious story.
With Nancy.
Yeah. But and I recommend. I recognized bits and pieces of Steve Jones talking about how he stole like David Bowie's microphone, and this happened and that happened and this happened from like years ago when I was like making donuts in the middle of the night, listening to like musicians talk about stuff on satellite radio, and I was like, oh shoot, this is like totally like Steve Jones talking about this stuff. Okay, cool. Well, this is like, how stuff got started, and it's like, oh, I know who that character's supposed to be. Oh, I know who that's supposed to be. It's like, oh, that's cool, before they like say their names and stuff like that, because I've watched so much stuff and read so many things in the past about the Sex Pistols. Not that I'm necessarily a huge fan now, but I was a teenager like 20 years ago or so. So I think when I was like 15, I was really into the Sex Pistols and watched a bunch of stuff about them, which like, 20 years ago, if you wanted to see stuff, you had to like go and like really search for it, because there wasn't an internet as we know it now. And so I'm like, oh, that's Vivian Westwood. Oh, that's this person. That's that person. And if you enjoy punk, even if you think the Sex Pistols are kind of like a corny boy band,
corny boy band put together by their manager.
Yeah. Not, unlike any other boy band that's out there, whether it be 98 Degrees or the Beatles. But no, and it's like Sex Pistols was a boy band. That's just what it comes down to. Yeah. And it's a fun, interesting thing so far. But yeah. Anything else we need to cover, Dave?
I think we've covered quite a bit in this episode.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening to People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Quick shout out to Oblivions. Go check out their June special, Dads and Grads Waffle Extravaganza. Dads and Grads. Also, go to the shop and pick up any of our cool t-shirts if you know a dad or grad who likes this show, or if you're a dad or a grad who likes the show and you want to get a t-shirt for yourself. New t-shirts coming to the shop sooner than later. And also, you're cool. I don't know if anyone's told you this lately, but you are cool. Whether you're riding the bus, listening to this on a flight, or folding laundry, or just kind of like goofing off. But yeah. All right, everyone. We'll see you next time. This has been DB and Dave, People's Guide to the Cthulhu Mythos. Check us out on Facebook. We're also on YouTube and the Twitter. Anything you have to say before we leave, Dave?
No, just bye. We will be here next week.
All right. Sounds good to me. We'll see you next time, everyone.
Do you like the TV series Tales from the Crypt? Are you interested in full episode and movie reviews from Tales from the Crypt? This podcast is for you. The Good Evening Kitties podcast, where I, Melissa, your ghostess with the mostess, recap every episode with special guests and bonus horror movie reviews. The Good Evening Kitties podcast can be found on most podcast platforms. Check it out today.